Today I'll be teaching you Block 3, which is The Light in August by William Faulkner. Light in August was published in the year 1932, and it is one of Faulkner's major works, and it is set in Jefferson, Mississippi, in a fictional county, like a town. The novel explores themes of race, identity, gender, isolation, and religion in the American South, especially the struggles of outsiders in a deeply prejudiced society. So, this novel basically is giving an insight of how, this is set in a like in a fictional setup. The setup is not real, yet it is going to give us an insight as to what kind of outsiders, specifically people those who migrated, what kind of life they lived, what kind of challenges they faced, and what were the struggles behind this. So this novel is going to give us an insight into it. So this novel is one of the best works of William Faulkner, and it um, it is basically set up in a very fictional setting. The characters are obviously fictitious, and okay. So talking of the story that this entire novel follows is it begins with a character like Lena Grove. She's a pregnant teenager and has made her way to Mississippi in search for her baby's father. She hitches a ride into the small town of Jefferson, which is home to a planning meal. One of the workers at the mill, Joe Christmas, is a brooding, racially ambiguous man who appeared suddenly at the mill one day in search of a job. After gaining employment, he was soon joined at the mill by another man named Joe Brown. The two formed a partnership, making and selling liquor illegally, and eventually they have quit their jobs. Another of the mill workers, the name is Byron Bunch, is intrigued and unsettled while Lena Grove suddenly appears at the mill one day. He tells the town's disgraced former minister, Reverend Gale Hightower, of his efforts to care for the girl. Soon, Lena comes to realize that the man she seeks, her baby's father, the name of that person is Lucas Burke, is really Joe Brown. Upon Lena's arrival in town, Brown is being held in the town jail after the murder of a local woman, that is Joanna Burden, and the burning of her home. Joe Christmas, Miss Burden's occasional lover, is the chief suspect. The narrative then shifts. So this person is a kind of Casanova kind of person. So he has been held in charges of murder of somebody and for burning somebody's house. The narrative then shifts to explore several of the characters' past. As a young minister, Gale Hightower secures a church in Jefferson to feed his obsession with his grandfather, a Confederate cavalryman who was killed in the town during the Civil War. Hightower's young wife is unfaithful and grapples with mental health problems. She eventually dies in a fall from the window of a Memphis hotel room where she is staying with another man. A scandal ensues, and Jefferson, the parishioners, turn on Hightower, who is forced to step down. As a child, Joe Christmas is left on the steps of an orphanage. When the facility's dietitian mistakenly believes that Joe has overheard her having a physical intimacy with a young doctor in the room, she worries that she is going to lose a job. To eliminate this risk, she threatens to expose young Joe's biracial background and thus have him transferred to an orphanage for black children. She discusses the plan with the orphanage janitor, who kidnaps Yo and makes him to and takes him to Little Rock, where he is found and returned, only to be adopted 2 weeks later by a sternly religious man and the name of that man is Mr. Mac, Mac, Mac Etchen and his wife. Joe's new foster father subjects him to regular beatings. He was a very strict and stern man. As Joe grows and enters puberty, he eventually crosses paths with Bobby, who is a prostitute and who works as a waitress in the nearby town. When his father catches his son at like in a dance with Bobby, a fight erupts and Joe kills his foster father by smashing a chair over his head. Abandoned by Bobby and her cohorts, Joe embraces a life on the run and wanders for more than 15 years, eventually making his way to Jefferson. In Jefferson, Joe Christmas stays in the cabin on Johanna Burden's property, and the two quickly become lovers. Their relationship is marked by passion, violence, and long periods in which they ignore each other. Miss Burden wants a child and claims to be pregnant, but Joe is strongly opposed to the idea. After a long time, Joe Brown comes to life with Joe Christmas in his cabin. Miss Burden tries to help Joe Christmas financially, but her meddling only provokes his ire. One night, he savagely attacks and kills her with a razor after she tries to fire a pistol at him in an apparent attempt at a murder suicide. Miss Burden's nephew in the New Hampshire So Miss Burden's, it finally provokes uh, the frustration. And finally, one fine day, he attacks her with a razor and kills her. Miss Burden's nephew in New Hampshire often offers a $1,000 reward for the capture of his aunt's killer. Such parties with bloodhounds comb the countryside for the fugitive Joe Christmas, who eludes capture for days, running to the point of hunger and exhaustion. Lena, in the meanwhile, moves into the cabin that Joe had shared in order to prepare for the birth of a baby. Byron Bunch stays in a tent nearby. Joe Christmas is apprehended on the streets of nearby place that's Smottstown. His biological maternal grandfather, Uncle Hines, makes his way to the crowd to curse Joe and calls for his death. So Byron and the Heinies arrive at Hightower's house and reveal that Joe Christmas's father, was a circus worker who tried to run off with the Heinie's daughter before Uncle Doc shot and killed him. Eventually, Uncle Doc placed the baby in the orphanage in Memphis, where he worked as a janitor. Byron wants Hightower to lie and claim that Joe Christmas was with him at his house on the night of Johanna Burton's murder. Hightower becomes angry and asks them to leave. Lena goes into labor, but by the time Byron arrives with the doctor, Hightower has already delivered the baby. Assisting in the delivery is Mrs. Hines, who mistakenly believes that Lena is her long dead daughter Millie and that the newborn is her grandson, Joe Christmas. Byron arranges to have Joe Brown sent to Lena's cabin upon arriving, and Brown is shocked to see Lena holding his newborn son, he slips out back in a window and runs away. Byron sees Brown escape and tries to stop him, but the much larger man beats Byron soundly and escapes on a passing train. Joe Christmas, meanwhile, escapes from his captor's control while he's being led across the town square. Before long, he's tracked down, he's shot, killed, and castrated in Hightower's kitchen by a bounty hunter named Percy Grimm. Afterward, the aging Hightower muses on his past and prepares for his own death. Afterward, Rip, a furniture mover near Jefferson, recounts to his wife how he gave a ride to a curious couple, a woman with a newborn child, accompanied by a man who was not the child's father. The couple, Lena and Byron, were half-hearted in search of the baby's biological father, as the man drove them deeper into Tennessee. Coming down to the character list, first on the line. Okay, the first character that I'm going to describe you is Joe Christmas, the novel's protagonist, who is also known as Joe Hines or Joe McAchen. In his first appearance in the novel, Joe is a young man in his early 30s, dressed in creased serge trousers, a soiled white shirt and a tie, and a stiff brimmed straw hat. A wanderer, he has a ruthless, overly independent quality to him that others frequently misinterpret as ruthless, loneliness, or pride. Biracial, he is often mistaken for and passes for a white man, silent, unfriendly, and brooding. His face consistently projects a cold and quiet look of contempt. Complex, conflicted, and multifaceted, Joe overly sabotages the little happiness that he is able to find for himself and consistently waylays any of his own attempts to find a place of belonging. Then comes Lena Grove. She is a pregnant teenager from Alabama, orphaned at 12. Lena comes to Jefferson on foot and by guidance along with the way from her home out uh, in the ways of the world. She is determined to find the man that is Lucas Burke, who made her pregnant and left her behind with the promise that he would eventually send for her. Young, pleasant faced, candid, friendly, and alert, Lena is an easygoing presence who seems unconcerned about her unsettled status in life because her only motive was to find the child's father. Then comes Reverend Gail Hightower, a defrocked tall, overweight, with skin the color of floor sacking. Hightower was once the minister of one of the town's major churches. He sought the post because his grandfather, a Confederate cavalryman, was gunned down in Jefferson while stealing chickens. Described as a 50-year-old outcast, He was forced to step down after his promiscuous wife died in a fall from a hotel in Memphis. Refusing to leave Jefferson Hightower, lives in a recluse, displaying his toughness and tenacity in withstanding the gossip, meddling, coercion, and eventual beatings he suffered at the hands of the town residents who had hoped to drive him off. Then comes Byron Bunch, a mill worker in Jefferson and the man who was initially misidentified to Lena as Lucas Burke, the father of the baby. In his 30s, hardworking and devout, Bunch leads a quietly regimented life, directing the choir of a rural church that has continued uninterrupted in the same routine for years. His life drastically shifts, however, when he meets the young pregnant Lena, whose vulnerability and plight trigger his natural instinct to protect and selflessly help others. Then comes Joe Brown, aka Lucas Burke, a gambler, bootlegger, and con artist. He's young, he's tall, with a distinctive white scar beside his mouth. Joe Brown first appears in dirty overalls in search of work at the mill. Lazy, yet alert to any situation he can turn to his advantage, Joe moves in a confident swagger but has the tendency to jerk his head to the side and look periodically over his shoulders. A known liar and an exaggerator, his shady past and questionable dealings make him an object of mockery and even contempt in the eyes of those who can see through his veneer of self satisfaction and confidence. Then comes Johanna Burden, a reclusive, lifelong resident of Jefferson. Born and raised in the house where she lives on the outskirts of the town, Miss Burden is still considered a northerner as her family relocated to the south after Reconstruction. Her grandfather and brother, who supported voting rights for blacks, were killed by a local man, Colonel Sartoris. He and in an infamous accident that town residents still recount. Subject to rumors and said to have had illicit relations with black men, Miss Burden corresponds with and advises the faculties, trustees, and students of various black colleges in South, occasionally traveling to the campuses to meet with them in person.